In this video, we're going to be looking at 10 different ways that you could fail your Microsoft SQL Server audit. We're going to be looking at different configurations and various potential risks that may exist in your SQL Server environment, and also different types of events that may be happening that would lead to you failing your audit. I'm going to be looking at these different risks and events through two different tools that are offered by IDERA software. One is IDERA SQL Secure, and the other one is IDERA SQL Compliance Manager. And on the screen right now we have IDERA SQL Secure. And some of the risks that I think stand out in an audit, there are a number of different risks, and literally in this tool there's 150 different checklist items that we will scan for and look for potential risks or configuration issues that might be standing out in your environment. But some of the top risks, or even what you might consider common risks, would be some of these that we have red flagged right here on the screen. In this particular policy, which is centered around CIS standard, Center for Internet Security standard, we have a couple of red flags that are showing up on the screen here. One of them is blank passwords. If we have any accounts that have any blank passwords, that's something you probably want to know about. And really that kind of goes hand in hand with this other checklist item, password policy enforcement. If you have any logins that are not using password policy enforcement, that's another red flag. That's going to throw up a big concern for your audits as well. Also, a common TCP port being used. Obviously, 1433, the listing port on just the default listing port for SQL Server. This is something that if you were to scan a network and you see the listing port 1433, this is a listing port that has been associated with SQL Server for many years, and pretty much throws a red flag that, hey, this is a SQL instance, and so that's where the most mission critical data would be located as well. And also, if we have the SA account on that SQL instance that is not disabled or renamed, then that could be a concern as well, because everyone knows that the SA account is on the SQL instance, so it will give you that option then to make attempts using that particular login account. You may not know other accounts that reside on that SQL instance, but the SA account is typically something there as a default. So it is important to disable it or rename it. Again, there's over like 150 checks in this particular tool, so I would encourage you to check out IDERA SQL Secure to do additional security and risk assessment scanning as well. But those are some of the top items that within the IDERA SQL Secure that I would say would fail an audit. And you can kind of go down the list here with these different security checklist items that I've pointed out, and you'll see at the bottom here it points out exactly where you need to focus your attention around certain accounts or certain SQL instances or specific configurations on the SQL instance as well. One other item is XP Command Shell. This really ties in also with just in general extended stored procedures. With XP Command Shell, you can basically run a SQL query using XP Command Shell and have it reach outside the scope of SQL Server to perform operations outside of SQL Server. So that could be a big risk as well. So that is one more item that I would throw out there as a red flag that could fail your audits. So with those as some of the top security risks, just doing a quick scan on the SQL instance, you might want to mark those down and check them in your environment. And of course, a tool like SQL Secure can help you with that analysis as well. Another area that may fail your audits is around elevated user permissions. I'm going to switch over in the same tool here. This product actually will scan and collect all the permissions, all the user accounts and permissions and objects, and assign permissions on those objects. And you can go into these different snapshots in time. This is not a tool that runs all the time. It will take snapshots on a regularly scheduled basis, and that could be, every day at 2 a.m. or every week on Sunday at 3 a.m., however you want to set up the schedule. But then as it gathers these snapshots, you can go back in time and analyze how that SQL instance was configured, or any risks that exist at that point in time, or any permissions that were assigned at that point in time as well. So I'll just go back way back here to this 2016. So as you can see, I have these snapshots going way back in time. This tool is kept up to date, on a regular basis with new risks, new scans for new risks that might be coming out in the industry as well. So over time, this tool has updated for those additional snapshots for additional SQL instances, versions, and additions as well. But I'm going all the way back here to 2016, and if I wanted to analyze permissions for a particular group or user or role, I can use these little tabs at the top, and let's just go in here and plug in my accounting group. And maybe I just want to see what they have as far as assigned permissions on my payroll database. This might be something an auditor would ask. What does this group have assigned permissions to on this payroll database? Because the payroll database could have sensitive information in it. It could have salary details. It could have social security information. It could have personal information around the employee as well. So we go ahead and select the Show Permissions. And again, we're looking at 2016 snapshot. So we'll go to Assign Permissions, and as you can see, we have server level permissions, how they're basically that group is getting access to the front door, and then once they're in on the database level, what additional objects that they have assigned permissions to. And we can see the grantee, the object. In this case, I've expanded the columns that have assigned permissions, what the permission level was, the grantor, the owner of that object, and grant, with grant, or deny, all of which you could export out if you need to share that with auditors as well. And there are other object types here with assigned permissions, like the scalar function, store procedures, tables, and we can go down to those levels as well and see what the assigned permissions were on which objects. You could also just expand that group and look at individual users like this, and then pick on one particular user to analyze. So I'm going to select this Gary Wise account, and notice he's actually part of the accounting elevated role. But we're also going to be analyzing his access being part of the grantee accounting group as well. So with the assigned permissions, now we see more objects with assigned permissions for that individual. And when we expand the column object, we can see Gary Wise has more elevated permissions. Grant and with grant on some of these objects that were not assigned permissions to the accounting group that he is a member of. And we go down the list here and we see also, like for social security info, account name, phone, and SSN or social security number, that he also has access. So we might want to pull back on some of those permissions as well. So this tool can help you with analyzing the permissions, and you can flip it around if you wanted to go to the particular objects as well and just look at whatever object you want to analyze the permissions and see if anyone does have just overall any more elevated permissions on that particular object. As you can see here, it shows you the grantee, the permission level, grant, with grant, or deny, and who granted the permission, which can also be exported out. So again, more elevated permissions can fail your audit. If you've accidentally given someone more elevated rights to particular objects, especially sensitive objects, then that's something you want to know about and remediate as quickly as possible. And now we're going to go over here to a different tool IDERA offers, and it's called SQL Compliance Manager. Now, Compliance Manager is tracking all of the event activity on the SQL instance. So if someone is looking at something sensitive that they shouldn't be, or if someone is modifying data or records that they should not be modifying, or if they're making security changes that they should not be doing, perhaps that's not their particular responsibility, or if they're making structural changes like creating a database so that they can move data from one sensitive data over to their rogue database and then back it up and take it offline. Those types of events can also, those events specifically could fail that audit as well. And with this tool, it's tracking everything that you tell it to track. So again, on that payroll database, if I go into some of my current audited events, I can filter by different time periods based on logins or categories you see up here at the top. the application name from where the activity came from, sub-event types, meaning if I'm looking at DML category activity, then sub-event types could be updates, inserts, deletes, that type of activity, and also coming from different workstations. You can also sort the events by using the grouping option. So that's what I'm going to do today. So we'll drag the category column up to the top, and then maybe we'll bring the event type up to the top. And so now I have a nice little sorting option here. And again, those areas that could fail an audit include looking at sensitive data when you shouldn't be. It could be data modifications, security events, or DDL events. And so as you can see, all those categories are here nice and neat. So if I go into DDL events, I can see if someone dropped a stored procedure and who it was that did that. And you can see the login, the application, the date and the timestamp. And if I wanted to look at, who's done any type of data modifications, we'll go in here and let's look at what types of delete activity have taken place. And once again, we have this most recent delete activity. It shows the SQL statement that was executed, the login, the application. It even shows you the before and after, what the records were before and after, if that's what you want to pick up. That is an option within the tool. But it's nice to have these types of abilities to be able to look at what events have taken place so that you can be accountable for it as quickly as possible, and you don't end up failing an audit if auditors find out some of these changes took place and you weren't aware of them. And then the security changes as well. So let's collapse this. Any security changes, we can see if application roles have been created, or if someone changed a password, you'll be able to see that as well through a tool like this. But those are things, again, security changes that take place can fail your audit if you weren't aware of those security changes. And of course, structural changes, or actually select activity, anyone looking at sensitive data. I think we already touched on the structural change, but anyone looking at sensitive data, we're able to see who did that as well and be aware of that. So that touches on some of the top 10 areas of risks, configurations, and events that could potentially fail your audit. I did look at these through the tools IDERA SQL Secure and IDERA SQL Compliance Manager. I would encourage you to use these tools to help you with understanding those types of risks and configuration issues in your own environment, and also any events that may be taking place that would be considered risky type events in your situation. You can download these tools from IDERA's website, www.idera.com. Look for IDERA SQL Secure and IDERA SQL Compliance Manager from the product drop-down. And when you go to each of those pages, you're able to start a free trial. And when you start a trial, you enter some basic information about yourself. Then you're able to download the software, and it comes with a 14-day trial license already embedded in the software, so you can hit the ground running with using the tools. So anyway, I hope that has been instructional for you. If you require a more formal discussion with the IDERA team, the technical team, we're always here to help out and answer those questions, so feel free to reach out to us, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.